Robert, thank you so much for taking the time and joining us today on the podcast.
Oh, it's a privilege. Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to learning more about 40 Days for Life. So let's dive right in. I mean, while most of our listeners might be aware to some degree and be somewhat familiar with what 40 Days for Life is and some of the work that you do, whether through participating themselves or maybe even through watching the Unplanned movie that shared the story of the former abortion provider, Abby Johnson. Could you tell us a little bit about the organization, what you do, and perhaps share a little bit about your role as well with 40 Days for Life?
Absolutely. Well, 40 Days for Life is a locally organised community initiative encouraging Christians to pray and fast for an end to abortion. And our campaign has gone all around the world. We're about 15 years old as an organisation. We started in Texas, and there was a group of Christians who were frustrated and angry that Planned Parenthood, the largest abortion provider in the United States, had come to Bryan in Texas, and they didn't know what to do. So they tried absolutely everything. And it was the foundation of David B. Wright and Sean Carney who founded the organisation. They organised the first campaign in 1998 and launched an organisation in 2004. And it was a very simple idea. It was to turn to God in a spirit of prayer and sacrifice because they had exhausted all the human efforts of trying to end abortion in their community. So they decided to organise a round-the-clock prayer vigil outside the Planned Parenthood building for at least 12 hours a day. I think the first one was 24 hours a day for a 40-day time period, because in Scripture, 40 days, God has used immense spiritual changes throughout salvation history, whether it be Noah, Jesus in the desert for 40 days, Elijah fasting for 40 days. Throughout the Scripture, we've seen God use 40-day time period to bring immense spiritual changes. So they decided to organise a prayer vigil for that whole 40 days, a couple of people praying at any one time, round-the-clock prayer vigil. And in addition to that, encouraging Christians to pray and fast and to take a pro-life message, community outreach all across the whole community. I think they visited every single home in the town with a bit of pro-life literature. And during that time, they saw the abortion rate decline by 28%. And not only that town was inspired, but people all around the country began to get interested in what can we do, something similar to this effort. And so other cities started joining a similar campaign. So there's three parts of the campaign: prayer and fasting, peaceful vigil, and community outreach. And its simplicity, I think, is a real appeal. And some people think, how does prayer make a difference in ending abortion? But we've seen a lot of babies saved outside abortion centres, often at the very last minute, last sign of hope for anyone having an abortion, but the first sign of mercy for anybody who's had an abortion. And so for some people, this is the first thing to go and stand and pray outside an abortion centre. It might be the first thing that they've ever done that's pro-life ever in their life. And they might have a conceptual idea of abortion, but if you go and stand outside and pray and see the reality of abortion where you live, that this isn't an abstract idea that happens in the parliament or courts. It's something that happens in the local community. One guy turned up at the abortion centre and he saw a medical waste truck, and that was his first hour going to pray there. It can wake people up to the reality of what's happening in their local community. So that's the essence of our campaign. And I've been the international director now for 10 years. So I've been all around the world to about 30 different countries helping campaigns get started, starting from nothing, from scratch, to organising a local pro-life campaign. So it's like having a front row seat, seeing God's grace in action, meeting a lot of different leaders and connecting, inspiring with people with the campaign. So in essence, we help Christians end abortion where they live. That's what the organisation is all about.
That's phenomenal, Robert. And I've had the wonderful opportunity to partner with, I think, 3 or 4 different 40 Days for Life groups now. As you mentioned, it was one of the first pro-life events that I ever participated in Victoria, British Columbia. It was a wonderful and faithful team there that witnesses outside of the abortion facility in Victoria. And I'm curious. So I love the stories of how people kind of enter into the pro-life movement. Our good friend on the program, Scott Klusendorf, often talks about how nobody really plans to join the pro-life movement. It's more of a summoning that people experience. And I'm curious, before we dive a little bit further into the nuts and bolts of how more people can get involved in 40 Days for Life and that sort of thing, I'd love to hear kind of your journey. You mentioned that you've been serving as the international coordinator for around 10 years now. Is this something that you always were kind of on a straight path towards, or is this something that really kind of blindsided you and you just realized that this was God calling you towards this ministry, or what did your journey towards this look like?
So it was certainly not a straight line. It was jagged journey of different ways. I became a Catholic at university. I studied history at King's College London, and I graduated in 2004. So the first time I really had any interaction with any pro-life arguments was at university. So Lord Alton, who's in the House of Lords, gave a pro-life talk at university, and he gave a pretty thorough, 50 years of history in the UK, why this was the most compelling social justice issue of our age. He showed the graphic reality of abortion in that talk, and he gave a sort of 101 political speech from beginning to end of how he'd been involved for decades in the pro-life movement. So that talk really kind of blew open this topic for me at university. I thought, wow, that's amazing. I've never really thought about this at a deep level. It's never impacted my life before. And I was I was an Anglican, I received into the Catholic Church in 2004. I thought I was going to work in the City of London, go and work for some bank or something when I was at university. So I did a summer doing that. And then I graduated, and I spent a bit of time working for the World Youth Alliance in Brussels, came back to London, and I tried my vocation quite shortly after that time. I was at seminary for several years, for a year in Spain and 2 years in London. But God had other plans for my life, and I discerned that the priesthood wasn't for me. And so 2008, I didn't carry on. I spent a year as a missionary in Canada with Net Ministries. And during my time in Canada, in Ottawa, in the capital, there's a Morgentaler abortion centre in Ottawa. That was where I first saw 40 Days for Life as a vigil. A lot of elderly people praying outside the Morgentaler abortion centre close to the Canadian Parliament. So that really struck me. Coming back to the UK, I felt called to go and give talks in schools on chastity for a year. And after that year, we started the first ever 40 Days campaign. So I saw a video in the States. I thought, wow, this is amazing. It's a great campaign. I felt God was calling me to start a campaign in the UK. So we started a first vigil in 2010 outside Mary Stopes, one of the largest abortion centres in the UK. So I thought it'd be a failure. It's a very secular country in the UK. Doing a public prayer vigil is quite countercultural here, and you're up against a lot of people who disagree with you. So most people, it's going way outside their comfort zone to do that. But we saw a baby saved on the second day of our first campaign in the UK, and we've never looked back. We had 6 saves on that first campaign, and we kept going. We get a lot of challenges, a lot of persecution in the UK, as I'm sure similar style of political activity in Canada. But it's been a great campaign, and we've now got over 15 vigils all around the UK.
That's great, Robert. And it's always encouraging to hear about the babies that are saved through the work like this in front of the clinics. And I always love the question of, how did you start in the movement? Because for a lot of people, it's very, very similar, right? Like, it's not like we grew up and we're 5 years old thinking this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. But in some way or another, God decides to put a blockage in our path and change it around, change our life trajectory around so that we begin to fight abortion in one way or another. Now, I can fully relate to the fact that prayer outside of an abortion clinic is a countercultural thing, especially coming from Canada, where there's no religious majority by any stretch of anyone's imagination. And so starting a 40 Days for Life vigil or anything along these lines seems like a daunting thing, as you mentioned, in the UK. But what would you took the initiative, you started one of these initiatives. Now there's 15, you said, or more than 15. What is the sort of way that someone who's interested could launch a campaign like this? What's required, what's necessary, and what sort of encouragement might you have for those who are doing it in a culture like the one that we are in, where religion is kind of seen as this fringe thing that you do in your own prayer closet and in your churches when you're allowed. But it has absolutely nothing to do with the broader culture, and certainly has nothing to do with the topic of abortion.
So we have a whole variety of leaders, from retired servicemen to students, and across the board. Many of our leaders in the United States are post-abortive women as well. Some people have been personally affected by abortion and feel very passionate about the topic and connect and relate to pro-life activism in that capacity. But we have different leaders from all walks of life. Our leader in Southampton, he's a post-aborted dad, and he worked in a military hospital. We did a podcast with him. He works in a military hospital, assisting with several abortions when he was helping with the military. He's got an incredible story, but he felt God was leading him to be a leader in his local community. With a local leader in Birmingham, Isabel, she started the March for Life, and she was just somebody who felt passionate about abortion and saw this was working, and they did just a Saturday prayer vigil where they lived, and they decided to take it round the clock with 40 Days for Life. She's now seen her abortion centre close, and the satellite ones close as well, and now the March for Life is a major event in London too. We've got elderly ladies who are the leaders. It really from people from all different walks for life, but they've got to have one thing in common, and that's that they feel that God is calling them to do something for the pro-life movement, and they've got to make the commitment and to know what they're signing up to and to respond to that. So we've had people who, it's a big step of faith to actually step up as a leader, but I've been blown away with the quality, the caliber of leaders, the sacrifice that they've had to say, right, I'm going to give this everything for 6 weeks, and to get a team of people around me to make this a reality, to organise a prayer vigil for 12 hours a day for 40 days solid is a difficult task, especially in a secular country like the UK, and we have leaders all around the world, and sometimes our leaders. Our leader in Germany has married the leader in Colombia, and they're now happily married in Germany. So we have a conference once a year as well. So I'm just in awe of the leaders we have. The leader in Nottingham, he also saw the abortion centre closed in the hospital. He's almost on the verge of retirement. He's a former headmaster, teachers, helps with the Ofsted examinations, going to schools and checking on them too. So we have people from all different places, but what unites them is a passion for the pro-life cause, knowing that with God all things are possible, including the end of abortion, and there are tangible things that we can do in our local community. Okay, we might not be able to end abortion in one huge step, but we can have small victories, and God can work in every single conversation that we have. The way that God works through the campaign is we see babies that are saved. We reach out to mums who are at the last step, just about to have an abortion. We offer hope to those who've had an abortion, and any conversation with a passerby, with those thinking of abortion, we help lead people to post-abortion healing programs, so we can be that first step, inviting somebody to go on one of those retreats. And any way you can help spread a growing awareness of the humanity of the unborn child through community outreach with Unplanned. It's never been easier with the pro-life resources, the literature we have, the books we have, and the films now to communicate that pro-life message. So yeah, we're in a secular culture here that don't like that message. We're getting more intolerant as a society here, but there's still so many grace-filled ways in which you can spread a pro-life message every day.
Absolutely. And we'll touch on more of those really, really wonderful stories that you've been blessed to experience, and I'm sure team members have been blessed to experience as well, about the joy that people experience watching these abortion facilities get closed and babies get saved and whatnot. We'll dive into more of that in just a moment, but let's touch a little bit further on equipping people, and for those listening, maybe they do have a calling like this on their heart. Maybe there isn't a 40 Days for Life presence in their community. I know that in Calgary, Canada, where I'm at, there's not only kind of church coordinators that help coordinate members of their church to adopt a day or several days during the 40 Days for Life campaign, but there's also regional coordinators that work with all of the low church coordinators and whatnot. For somebody who would be listening, who there isn't 40 Days for Life in their community, they're interested in bringing that prayerful witness to their community and to the abortion facilities that are in their community. What kind of support, what can they anticipate and look forward to support-wise from 40 Days for Life? What are they going to be beating their entire own path through the bushes? Are they going to be reinventing the wheel? Or what kind of support can they anticipate for establishing that in their home community to give them a little bit more of a confidence that they will be able to pull this off, I guess?
Yeah, that's a great question. And for any prospective leader, ultimately is is God asking you to start a campaign? And is that a yes or a no on that question? And if the answer is yes, then fantastic, and we want them to be a local leader. We've got lots of tools, technology, training to help encourage them to make that task as easy as possible. And if somebody's not being called to be a leader, then we can help discern that process and talk with them. We have applications in June and December, and basically we have training videos, sort of 8 40-minute videos, to just go through every single part of what it is to organise a campaign, from the prayer vigil to the community outreach, to gathering a team of people together, to the online resources that we have of having the online prayer vigil, to helping promotional flyers, helping reach out to churches. And a key part of it is recruitment, how to recruit other people. So we had a teacher that came to our prayer vigil once, and he prayed for an hour at the vigil, and he said, God, how can I help to end abortion where I live? And he went back to his school and he took a pro-life message to all the 500 pupils at his school. And that was just from 1 hour of prayer, coming to the prayer vigil and coming back. For anyone, this has got to be, not everybody wants to go out and organise a prayer vigil outside the abortion centre. It's most people have quite a bit of resistance to doing that. They're going outside of their comfort zone. They might be afraid. They might have reservations. They think, where on earth do I start? But I think that the key part is if you can get a core team of people around you, whether that be 4 to 6 people, and that's how we started in London. We started with a core team, and I say to all the leaders, if you follow the training, we've had thousands of campaigns all around the world. We've seen over 17,000 babies saved from abortion. And if you follow the model, it's going to, you've got to put the hard work in and allow God to work. And with prayer, all things are possible. With prayer, we can move mountains, we can see miracles. And we've seen over 1,000 babies in the UK who were scheduled for an abortion, but the mothers chose life at the very, very last minute. So I've witnessed that several times at the prayer vigil, to see women who is seconds away from going for an abortion and then had a change of heart, change of mind. We've had offer of leaflets outside the abortion centre. Pregnant, worried, will help. We've got a great crisis pregnancy centre in London called the Good Counsel Network. They've done a lot of this frontline ministry for years. A couple of the abortion centres in London are former prayer. One of them is a former convent, and the other one is a former house of prayer. So, there's extraordinary history there of how the building used to be a convent of nuns in the 1960s in Twickenham in London, and the building was bought by an abortion provider in the 1970s, and it's now a late-term abortion centre. So we've had one prayer vigil outside that centre. There's now a buffer zone there preventing organising a prayer vigil, but we had one leader there who did an incredible job, Justina Pasek. She was a Polish lady. She was there full-time for 5 years, and she saved several hundred lives from abortion, offering leaflets at the last moment outside that abortion centre. So for anyone who's worried, who's concerned of I'd like to do this, but I don't know how or what to do, through the leadership, we train up our local leaders, and we had over 500 local campaigns. The last campaign, we've got 20 staff in total. And our campaigns in the United States are really going very strong at the moment. There's a very awful government in the United States, but on the grassroots level, the pro-lifers have done an incredible job, and 40 of our vigils now are year-round in the United States as opposed to just 40 days. So we've got 2 vigils in the UK that are year-round rather than just for 40 days now. So you've got to start somewhere, and if you start doing small actions, and then those actions can grow over time. But it seems an insurmountable task to do around the clock prayer vigil, but we break it down in the training, and if you do that and follow it, you build up contacts. You've got to go to churches. There's a hard sell in churches. Pastors aren't always on board so much, and priests and pastors getting them on board, getting the message out in the local churches. If you do a really great job recruiting people, then if 2% of people reply and say yes, then you'll have enough people to get around the clock prayer vigil. So but it's an exciting campaign. It's a grace-filled, and we're on the cusp between the culture of life and the culture of death. So we've seen many grace-filled stories, just right outside the abortion centre, of people changing their minds, and yeah, it's been an exciting time.
Yeah, it sounds like an exciting time, Robert. Yeah. And I, for one, love to hear the stories of some of the work that's been done. And I know a lot of our listeners do as well. So could we get into some of the specifics of these mountains that have been moved by the work that's been done? Could you share? So for example, I think about the Abby Johnson story that I referenced earlier. There's a 40 Days for Life presence outside of the clinic she was at. She saw what abortion was, and it was interacting with those workers there, and ended up becoming pro-life, which was phenomenal. But one of the things you've referenced is this is not just a one-off story. I mean, this happens time and again in the UK, in the States, in Canada, in various different places. So could you share with us a little bit more about, I don't know, just like a specific life that was saved or a specific clinic that was closed and how it happened, or even, a worker or two that stopped working within the industry because of the presence of 40?
Yes, so absolutely. I'll come on to London in a second. Abby Johnson, I mean, everybody knows her story. She's helped over 500 abortion workers leave through, and then there were none. Her ministry, she came to London in 2013, and we did a tour around the UK with her. And, Unplanned now has been shown all around the world. So it just shows you that the power of one person's conscience. Not only our headquarters is in the former Planned Parenthood building in Bryan, but her story has been heard all around the world through the Unplanned movie. And in London, our abortion centre closed. We organised our first vigil in 2010. It was the second day the couple were going into the abortion centre, and they don't allow born children into the abortion centre. So the boyfriend had to wait outside with two born children as his girlfriend went into the abortion centre. And he started talking with the volunteers for like 15 minutes. And after that time, he rushed into Mary Stopes. He got his girlfriend, and they left, never to come back again. And from that moment, I just thought, we're onto a winner here. If it's day 2, and we've seen a baby saved already. We also had a mum who had a dream, and she thought that her baby was calling out to her in her dream. Mummy, mummy, please don't abort me. This was the night before she was scheduled to have the abortion. And the pro-life counsellor that day helped her to discern that was the dream, and this was her baby was calling out to her in her dream, and she decided not to go ahead with the abortion. Another person walked down the line of prayer volunteers, shaking their hands of each one of them, saying, thank you so much for being here. If it wasn't for people like you, then my girlfriend would not have chosen life. So we saw 6 babies saved on our first ever campaign in the UK. And then we moved to the British Pregnancy Advisory Centre, which is the British abortion provider, the largest abortion charity in the UK. And that was in a Victorian big square. And we organised a vigil there for 3 years. So we did 7 campaigns, about 3,000 hours of prayer outside that abortion centre. And every campaign, we saw about 6 babies saved. And there were cyclists that came past. It was on a cyclist lane. So some of them were like kamikaze cyclists. They didn't like our message. So you got some positive messages, and you got people shouting at you, telling you where to go, telling you number one. But our presence there was really powerful, and we got the bishop to come to the prayer vigil in 2012, and the pro-abortion lobby kicked up a massive storm at that point because one of the pro-life leaders, John Smeaton, head of SPUC, said the pro-abortion lobby know how powerful the bishops are and getting them involved and how important that is. And so we had a protest of about 500 abortion protesters turn up while the bishop came, which brought a lot of traction. We brought several hundred pro-lifers were there at the same time. So there's a huge standoff between the pro-aborts there and the pro-lifers who are just quietly praying there, and the pro-abortionists who are making sacrilegious jokes and shouting and making a lot of noise. But the abortion centre closed the following year, and we had a prayer vigil inside the abortion building. The day after their lease was terminated, wrote to the Duke of Bedford. He gave us permission. He was the landowner who owned the building. And so we had a prayer service. We had a mass inside the building the day after the abortion centre closed. And so in the words of the Eucharist, Jesus says, "This is my body given for you." Abortion advocates cling to their own bodies that others may die, but Jesus gives of his own body that others may live. So all the shouting, all the abuse we'd had for years, we'd had a lot of abuse and people throwing eggs at us and this kind of thing for years. We knew that all that was worth it because we saw that abortion centre close. And since that time, we've seen Belfast, Leamington Spa, Birmingham, Nottingham, and now Brighton has closed. They're now doing at-home abortions in the UK. 50% of the abortions are at home through pills by post. So all the big abortion centres are vulnerable to close. So Brighton and Streatham have have just closed. But we need to have a new paradigm for the pro-life movement in the UK. We're very much on the periphery of society. The abortion lobby has complete dominance in the media, in politics, and there's the pastoral, political, prophetic angles of the pro-life movement. And we need to regroup, and what we're doing as a campaign is working, but we need a multifaceted approach across the whole of society with a lot of dynamic pro-life organisations who can just take things to the next level and challenge every presupposition of the pro-abortion culture that permeates British society. So this was one victory. I mentioned in Ealing, they've had a very successful vigil there now. They've been banned there for the time being. It's a criminal act to pray outside the abortion centre. One campaign there, they had 23 babies saved from abortion from one vigil back in 2013. So it was very, very successful. One lady was being forced into the abortion centre from her family, who were forcing her in. She jumped out the window and jumped over the hedges to escape them, and she chose life for her unborn child. Another lady, her blood tests were misdiagnosed. She was holding the abortion pill in her hand, and then the nurse said, "Oh no, your blood results are wrong." And she actually misread the blood results and thought they were somebody else's or something. At the last moment, she decided not to go ahead with that abortion. There was a nun praying outside the building that day, said, "We're praying for you." She gave her testimony with her 2-year-old child at our kickoff event a couple of years later. So these really dramatic stories, and this is kind of the front line of spiritual battle. We've had many priests come and pray at the vigil. We've had a number of priests do exorcism prayers of their own sort of volition or of their own ministry every single day in different places around the country. And we're an ecumenical campaign. We're Christians of all walks of life, Protestants, Catholics, evangelicals, people from all the most dynamic campaigns are where the Christians are all working together for the same goal. This is an issue that unites Christians. It doesn't divide them, that we all believe in the sanctity of human life. And when we all get together and just say, right, okay, what can we actually do about this? And, how can we work together to accomplish a similar goal? Our Brighton leaders evangelical, and we're 80% Catholic in the UK, but we've got leaders from all different walks of life.
That's phenomenal. And I would love to just hear more and more of these amazing stories. I'm sure that you could go on all afternoon with more of these stories of minds changed and lives saved. As we start to pivot towards kind of the frequently asked questions that I'm sure that you guys get asked all the time, one kind of pivot that I'd be very curious in, not to completely deflate the balloon, but I know that from the experience of many people here in Canada, so we have these bubble zones around a lot of our abortion facilities in Canada to try to protect, I'm using air quotes for those listening to the audio, protect the mothers who are having abortions. And so for a lot of them, they people doing 40 Days for Life, they have no idea whether or not these mothers are having abortions or turning away because they don't have the opportunity to interact with the mothers, with the fathers that are going into these abortion facilities. And so for many people that I've spoken with, it's been a very, very diligent, very committed approach to 40 Days for Life, but they often don't necessarily see the fruits of their labor. They don't see the mothers. The mothers don't come over and give them big hugs and thank them for saving their babies. What words of encouragement do you offer to people who have been very faithful in participating in 40 Days for Life or other such prayer and fasting campaigns, but may not at this point have seen the fruits of their labor, of their efforts and whatnot? How do you encourage them, and how do you kind of help them persevere with this ministry, I suppose?
That's right. Well, that's a great question. And not every single campaign does see tangible results. Because we're a prayer ministry, we're encouraging Christians to pray. And you might organize a campaign, you might not see any tangible results at the end of that campaign. So I was always touched by a story of a campaign in the United States, and they tried to get people involved, and it was just a mother and daughter effort, and they found very few people willing to get involved. But even they heard of a baby that was saved from their particular campaign. And I think we're very much trading in hope here, in the sense of we need to empower people with hope, not only those who are abortion minded, but also pro-lifers who feel exasperated with the situation in our country, that abortion's allowed up to birth. that the pro-life message is not being heard in across society. So it's really that perspective of the problem of abortion is that it's at record levels across the country. Pro-abortion legislation, every single political party's pro-abortion. The media is saturated with biased pro-abortion information. And it's easy to hold up your hands and just say, what can we do? This is a desperate situation, and this is totally hopeless. And even in places where you can't pray within 200 meters of the abortion centre, we've got 3 of those buffer zones in the UK. We've got one in Pforzheim and Frankfurt in Germany. There's most of Australia has buffer zones now, as well as Canada and New Zealand. They're trying to bring them in. So with challenges like that you can't be necessarily close, it's another step of faith. The first step of faith is believing that through prayer we can really change things, but then also to believe that organising a prayer vigil 200 metres away, that's another step of faith. So for 3 years we've had a prayer vigil in Ealing, 200 metres from the abortion centre, and the save rate has gone down 90%. But we've still seen women who have changed their minds, and there have been taxi drivers who've dropped off the girls at the edge of the buffer zone. We've heard grace-filled stories that have still happened there. So that's a hard thing, hope against hope. And there is a high turnover of people who get involved and then realise that the spiritual struggle that's involved in this debate and how difficult it is to see a change. The human heart's a battlefield, a battlefield in this topic. And we hear many tragic stories. We had a story of twins, and the mum changed their mind in Portugal and Lisbon a year ago, but she re-changed her mind. She went ahead with the abortion. There was another mum with twins who chose life. And so not every story is easy. And I have seen many of the blessings and have seen many of the positive stories. And I think we have to trust God, trust God beyond measure, beyond imagination. And when we trust in him, that this is his fight, it's not necessarily ours. And when we look at this, look at the abortion debate from a purely human perspective, it seems an impossible task to end abortion and an insurmountable task. But with God, all things are possible. So I always trust in his providence and think, how can we act doing God's will in our actions? And, our trip to Croatia, we started with one vigil, and now they're praying outside every single hospital, 35 hospitals that do abortions in Croatia. So this was just one campaign, and that now they've taken it to every place. So, I think it's Pelagianism. It's Pelagius was a British monk, and it's like, you've got to sort of attain salvation through human means. It's, from that perspective, yeah, it's pretty hopeless. But if we trust in God, we put him center and foremost, that he acts in and through us, that he has a better plan. And even the mums who go for the abortions, it might be the second abortion. You'd be praying there, and if they saw you, that they might remember that they might not go ahead with the second abortion. But what was for sure, that this is where abortions happen. This is, from a pro-life perspective, this is a great place to campaign, to pray. It's where abortions happen in the local community, and the kickback we get is a sign that, yeah, this is working. So if you do have a buffer zone, it's like, you're in the right place. What you're doing is working, and devil does not want you to be there, and this is a spiritual battle, and you'll very tangibly see that. I could give many examples of the spiritual battle that you can really clearly see outside abortion centres.
Yeah, that's absolutely key, and you've referenced it several times that this, is a spiritual battle, but it's also like the place of death where we go and where we seek to rescue those who are being drawn to the slaughter here. And it's a good reminder for all of us, whether we're in front of the clinics or on the streets, at universities, wherever it might be, to remember that God is sovereign, that this is his fight that we participate in, and he's the one that saves the children using us. So really, really helpful to remember. Let's dive into the frequently asked questions now. When I think of a frequently asked question about a ministry in front of abortion clinics, I often think about the narrative that the pro-abortion media and other abortion activists like to promote, and that is that anyone who stands in front of an abortion clinic is, they're preaching in a nasty way. They're shouting, they're yelling, they're calling down condemnation. There's these fire and brimstone messages, and there's nothing but judgment happening in front of these clinics. And sadly, there are a lot of pro-lifers who have never been involved in anti-abortion work or pro-life work, or been in front of the clinics themselves. And this is the only narrative they hear, and some of them believe it. And so from your experience being in front of the clinics, from your experience working with people around the UK, could you touch on the frequently asked question of, isn't the work you're doing just, calling women names and judging them for their actions as they seek to do what they want by getting an abortion?
Yeah, that's a great question, and that is the media summary of how we're portrayed in the UK, that we are harassing women and we've got the signs, the end is nigh, and hell and brimstone is about to happen, and we are sort of the ultimate bigots in society. And we get challenged from a lot of different angles in the UK. We get challenged from the local government, the local councils, the national government. Challenged us through the Home Office. We've been challenged through the police. We've been challenged through public opinion, through media, through abortion supporters, and also the abortion industry, multi-million-pound abortion industry in the UK. So we're getting attacked from 7 different angles, and always the accusation is harassment, that we're harassing women. I've been involved for 10 years. I haven't known of a single story where a woman has substantially been harassed by a pro-lifer, and whether that's sort of verbal or physical harassment. Yet at the same time, this media narrative is very slick and professional in how it's spun out against us. In the last autumn campaign, we had 30 articles in the media, basically haranguing, bringing out this narrative. 30 articles in the secular media spinning off the same narrative, but is really built on straw. When you really look at this topic, there's a group called Sister Supporter, a pro-abortion campaign group in the UK, who've really, this is their plug to end harassment. The way they started was they started harassing pro-lifers. So they were the first campaign group in living memory to actually engage in the activity that they were supposed to be opposing. But what's really funny, when we have like old grannies who are there praying, and we're accused of harassing women, and it's like the narrative kind of breaks down at that point. We were on the BBC radio, on the national radio, and we had a load of journalists come after that interview, going back many years ago, and a lot of them were really disappointed because they were hoping to see the kind of Westboro Baptist Church style protest, and when they got there, it's like, oh, how frustrating! It's not what we thought we were. So just a few people praying peacefully and quietly, peacefully, prayerfully, legally is how we do it. It's not a story. It's not a story for the media. It's always sort of something sensational for the media, and we don't really fit their narratives. So we simply pray and offer help. We have pavement counsellors or sidewalk counsellors there. They're a great training from Monsignor O'Reilly or Sidewalk Advocates for Life. It's very simple. You offer a leaflet, say, "Can I help you?" And if they say no, they walk past, and 9 out of 10 women will walk past and not take that offer of help. For the one woman that does take that offer of help, what's at stake is not only the life of that unborn child, potentially a lifetime of regrets of having an abortion. At that moment is a possibility to, not only save the life of that baby, but for generations to come, to have an impact on that family, maybe affect the relationship between mother and father, but impact that family for generations to come. And I met a French lady who chose life outside the abortion centre. She'd given her birth. She was, in difficult circumstances, unemployed, came over from France. Boyfriend had basically abandoned her, wanted to go for the abortion. She took the leaflet for this second appointment going for Mary Stopes, and she's seconds away from having an abortion, and she took that offer of help. She went to the crisis pregnancy centre, and she chose life for her baby. And that's a hard decision and lonely, but she's being supported by the council when I met her. But just amazing to hear these stories. We have a Christmas party in London with all the mums that have chosen life. There's like 20, 30 mums. It's just a beautiful moment, and many of them from other countries, from not just the United Kingdom. That this is the time where we are actually helping women. We're supporting them. The evidence is there. And if we were harassing people, we'd be shut down by the police before you know it. So one vigil, we had the police called 100 times in London. So it was a little bit like a crying wolf, and an Aesop fable where you cry wolf and you just keep crying wolf, and by the end of it, like, this is getting silly. So the police are obliged to turn up every time somebody calls them. But by the end of that process, I think they were fairly fed up. So some of our volunteers are the most meek, humble people that you'd ever meet, and the idea that they're harassing people is borderline laughable, but quite hard to get that narrative out of the secular media when it's bombarded upon you, and you wouldn't believe the lies and the misinformation become truth and reality for many people, and to break through that is a challenge. So we're still working on it. We've got a website, Be Here For Me, which helps show the women that have been helped, and it's the voice of the mothers who are saying, we don't want buffer zones, we were helped, we chose life for our babies, and we don't want to see buffer zones. So we're trying to get their voice out in the public too.
Absolutely. And I think that's such a fascinating point as well on the crying wolf. Here in Canada, as I mentioned, there's this push to expand bubble zones and all that sort of thing. And with every abortion facility having surveillance, I mean, better surveillance than I'm sure most banks and Parliament and whatnot, still, they've never been able to provide an example of harassment or any kind of negative conduct by the 40 Days for Life people, which I think only speaks highly of the incredible code of conduct that they're all held to and whatnot. And so I know that you've touched on it a couple of times about the pamphlets and leaflets that can be circulated. I'm sure at times the conversation with mothers who are going into the facility is a matter of, well, I don't want abortion, but it's my only option. Whether it's because of family circumstances, I'm going to get kicked out of my house, I'm going to lose my job, I'm going to X, Y, Z. Abortion is my only option. I know that every interaction, I'm sure, is very different, but what kind of thought or suggestion would you give to people who are joining for 40 Days for Life campaigns around the world? What is kind of the natural or go-to response to help them understand that abortion isn't actually their only option, that there is support available, though the road may be long and challenging, there is support available for those mothers? Where would you go with that, I suppose?
Absolutely. Well, for anyone who is thinking of an abortion, many women feel like they have no choice. And to know that, any tangible need that you have, whether it's financial, whether it's housing, whether it's counselling, whether it's emotional support, whether it's having a shoulder to cry on, whether it's talking to somebody else, any specific need that they have, if they know that there is alternative help available. Many of the women don't even know that there is alternative help available. Literally at the abortion centre, it is have an abortion or nothing at all. And that's really it. And it's not that the abortion providers are offering tangible help for women who want to choose life for their unborn child. So it's really a parody of choice. Number one, the women feel like they have no choice who are going for the abortions. And number two, the choice offered by the abortion centre is, abortion or nothing. So it's like, you're on a conveyor belt and you're being sold one option. So the idea that is a choice, whereas the pro-life position, if you're going to go for the abortion, we're not going to, that's your decision, and we are here to offer love, offer help, offer support. But the number of people that don't even know that there is alternative help available. In addition, the government's funding the abortion providers up to £30 million, a year to BPAS, one of the largest abortion providers. So they're getting a huge amount of funding, but where is the funding for pro-life groups that are specifically helping? And it's the Mother Teresa nuns and other pro-life groups that are offering that help for anyone who's in a crisis pregnancy, and to get that message across. That is a life-changing, life-saving message. And many people are having abortions for socio-economic reasons. Whereas the law in this country, it's really for extreme circumstances. But now we've got the pill at home, so it's making life a lot harder to connect with those who are abortion-minded. So, how can we communicate a pro-life message a lot clearer? Talking, listening to those, thinking this is a last moment. And I've heard so many grace-filled stories. I've heard pavement counsellors who are really, really good at reaching out to somebody at the last second, offering them a leaflet and saying, we're here for you. If there's anything we can do for you. That's a very difficult thing to do, because you've not only got to communicate, number one, there's help available. Number two, the humanity of the unborn child. And number three, about what is the reality of the abortion centre and what happens there. And you've got to communicate those three things in like the 10 seconds that you've got. They might stop for a longer conversation, but if you can communicate those things really clearly and succinctly, then, and to know that there is other help available. So and many men can be pushing their girlfriends towards going for the abortion, but know that there are things that the men can do to also help. Many women feel the man will say, you do what you feel best, which is a kind of euphemism for go for the abortion. Women don't feel supported by that, or they say, whatever you feel is best, you should do that, which is kind of like go for the abortion. Many women will have an abortion because they didn't feel supported by the men as well. So some of them are smoking outside the abortion centres, and just a grace-filled conversation. You never know what can happen in that time. So I've got hundreds of stories of different leaders from other countries, and we're doing very well in Latin America at the moment, really flourishing. The campaign's bigger than it ever has been before, and we've still got a lot more to grow. So we've seen South Korea going to sign up for the autumn. We've got Berlin, Stuttgart in Germany, and Austria as well joining for the first time. So there's always new places to start, and there's a lot of work to do for the pro-life movement in the UK. But you look at how the Berlin Wall fell in the end of communism, and communism just seemed kind of completely insurmountable, just all powerful, the entire state, and at the end of the day, the way in which it collapsed was fairly spectacular. Of first of all, the Berlin Wall coming down, and then Gorbachev and all the Eastern European countries. So you don't know how abortion could end quite quickly if all the dominoes in the right place, and just the lies and the misinformation just come crashing down. When they do come crashing down, then we seem a very, very long way off that in the UK. And to think that we could end abortion here just seems 1,000 miles from where we are. But again, it's hope, and it's how can we do small things, and then those things accumulate over time into something more spectacular. But God has a bigger plan, and that's what we're part of.
Absolutely. And that's, obviously we're in a very similar situation here in Canada. Our parliament just debated a bill as to whether or not we should ban abortion when abortion's only being provided to kill a baby girl, sex-selective abortions, and we couldn't even get traction on that. It feels so daunting to have this massive journey ahead of us, but shout out to my colleague Alex, who's a huge fan of these motivational posters. The journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step sort of thing that we have to do. The step that's in front of us, we can't get overwhelmed or be despondent because of the overwhelming journey. We have to take that first step. And so the last question from me before anything left from you, Peter, maybe share a little bit about the timing of 40 Days for Life. I know generally in Canada, so you had mentioned that there are a few year-round campaigns, but generally the ones that I'm familiar with are often aligned with Lent, February, March kind of time in Canada, as well as September. And obviously, February, March isn't a wonderful time in Canada to be doing sidewalk counseling and prayer and whatnot. But so not only the Lent factor, but also I think about how this is around 8 to 12 weeks after the Christmas, New Year's festivities, when I'm sure there are spikes in abortions being performed because of sexual escapades that people are on during that holiday time, and as well for the summer. Share maybe a little bit about the timing of the 40 Days for Life campaigns and what goes into why it's worth being on a freezing cold sidewalk in February to pray for an end to abortion, I guess.
Yeah, so we have two campaigns a year. One's during Lent, which varies every year, the timing. And then the second one is in the autumn, starting on the last Wednesday of September until early November. So we found that doing two campaigns a year works. Many communities can't do a year-round witness, so just starting with something that has a start, a middle, and an end date is a great way to build up traction, to build up momentum over time. And some campaigns can do some cities can do 2 vigils a year, some just do one. It's better to do one really well than to fudge it with 2 mediocre campaigns. And it takes really 2 to 3 months to really plan and prepare and put everything in place to do it really, really well. And we find that the leaders who follow the instructions to the T, they're the ones who see the majority of grace-filled results. Our most popular picture is of an individual man in Alaska praying, and he's got like an icicle coming off his beard, and it's a kind of sign of courage. And I'm sure in Canada, I know how freezing cold it is with 20 centimeters of snow, and the Mr. Ploughy has to come out and get rid of all the snow. It's quite a fairly big deal to be praying outside in February, March. You need to take a radiator with you to be able to do that. So other places around the world, we've got vigils in Colombia there on the equator, so it's not a big deal at different parts of the year. But it makes it harder, but it's also a sign of courage, a sign of witness if you're there in the freezing cold and you're still there. We had one vigil in the UK, and it was like almost snowing every single day, really, really cold, freezing weather every day, and that was not easy at all. So weather is obviously quite a big component for our campaigners. We're outside. We're vulnerable to whatever the weather may be. So we had one volunteer who was raining, and he decided to pray in his car, but he felt called to stand in public, and a friend joined him at that time. But we are called to be outside and endure the weather wherever it is. And I think it is good having 2 campaigns a year. And it works in the cycle of building. You can't start with just doing something all out straight away. You've got to start with a specific goal in place. And our catchphrase is the beginning of the end of abortion. And if it's just one grace-filled conversation, one act of love, with the intention of helping women and unborn children, can just open up a huge can of worms of just a very, very exciting adventure. Everyone has to start somewhere, and 90% of people who do participate say they experience spiritual growth as being part of it. So even if you don't see a tangible benefit of praying there, and many people don't see any sign at all, but you may experience personal spiritual growth personally, that God may want to work on your heart first, before we can reach out to other people and offer help and hope. And you think of every single passerby. We have several thousand passers-by in London at the vigil every day. Just every single passerby is an opportunity for a grace-filled conversation of, changing that person's mind, or at least getting them to think about the topic. And doesn't matter where they are on the journey or what's happened in their past. It doesn't matter what's happened in someone's past. It's where you go from this point onwards. And so we've had former abortion workers change heart, change mind. Sue Thayer used to run the Planned Parenthood in Storm Lake, Iowa. She now works full-time for 40 Days for Life along with Hayward Robinson. So we've got 2 former abortionists on our staff who are very well versed in how abortion workers think and practice, and their intellectual sort of logic of how they operate and how Planned Parenthood operates. So but yeah, I believe we will see big changes one day. We have to be very, very patient, and if we're doing God's will, that's when we're doing what we're called to do. And both Canada and the United Kingdom, it feels like we are in a very, very extreme abortion countries, and some of the most extreme abortion countries in the world, that we're not only murdering our own babies, that we're going to other countries. We are paying for and exporting abortion to other countries around the world, even where abortion is illegal, using taxpayers' money from both our countries. So that's how extreme. We're not happy with aborting our own babies. We want to abort other babies in other countries illegally against the laws of other countries. So that's how extreme the situation is. But God will show a bigger victory, and we're faithful to Him. He's in control. He has a bigger plan. And even when a baby is aborted, He has a bigger plan and can bring good out of evil too.
Amen. Yeah, that's a great way to put it, and I think it's a great place to end as well. I can just tell from the way you speak, you have 100 conversations, 1,000 stories, just because of the consistency and the amount of time you spent doing this sort of work. So I thank you so much for that. If there are people listening who want to learn more about 40 Days for Life, want to get in contact with you to perhaps start a 40 Days for Life vigil and grow a team in their own local area, how can they get in contact with either you or even just 40 Days for Life as a whole?
Yeah, so we've got a website, 40daysforlife.com. That's the first point of call. We've done over 200 podcasts as well, so you can listen to all of them for free. We've got a webcast, we've got a YouTube channel, we've got a magazine in the United States, we've got a shop. Watch Unplanned, must watch Unplanned and encourage other people. It's an opportunity for evangelization to see Unplanned. Not only does it graphically show an abortion, it tells the story of an abortion worker who left and a whole story of 40 Days for Life. So Unplanned is a great place to start. And then, look up your local vigil. Go to your local abortion center and also pray. Pray, God, what can I do to end abortion where I live? And, that if you pray that prayer of like, Lord, what can I do? Here I am, send me, kind of thing. Or are you calling me for this area? Maybe you're called to be a volunteer, to be a leader, to be, assistant, be a team member. There are so many different ways of being involved, or you might want to invite other people to be involved. But our website's the first port of call, and there's so much that you can learn about the pro-life movement there. It's the whole lifetime you could dedicate to just the experience that we've had in the last 15 years, and the sky's the limit. We want to have campaigns all around the world and to have every country involved, and just keep growing as an organisation. So pray and discern what you're called to do, and God will answer your prayers, and He will answer our prayers to end abortion too.
Thank you. Yeah, that's absolutely great. Robert, thank you so much for taking the time and joining us today on the podcast.
It's been a privilege. Thanks so much indeed.
That was Robert Colquhoun from 40 Days for Life. That was a great conversation. I absolutely loved it. If you want to learn more, get involved, or even just reach out, 40daysforlife.com is the website. You can find it in our show notes as well. Cam, as we wrap this up, I'd like to hear your final thoughts, and perhaps if there's anything else you'd like to share, now is the time.
Yeah, I can't speak highly enough of 40 Days for Life. I've been involved, as I mentioned in the episode, a few different groups across Canada, wonderful, wonderful people. And as Robert mentioned, this is really an entry point. This can be where you cut your teeth on the pro-life movement and have that prayerful kind of 11th hour witness outside of abortion facilities, and offer your prayer and fasting for the sake of the lives of children whose lives may be very much in danger of being ended. And so 40 Days for Life, they're active in a lot of communities. Check them out. And if you want to check out how you can help us as Pro-Life Podcast reach more and more people, whether it's advertising, whether it's other ways to get more people listening to the content that Peter, you and I are covering every week, please consider becoming one of our Patreon supporters. We have some exciting new stuff coming down the tube for Patreon. We're hoping to do an unveil in a couple of weeks here, but there's no time like the present to join our Patreon team. You can find us at patreon.com/prolifeguys. And by financially partnering with us, your money will go towards bringing the pro-life worldview and tools about how to share that pro-life worldview to people across the country and around the world. And that's how we're going to change more minds. That's how we're going to save more lives. And that's how we're going to end up transforming our culture with the Lord's blessing, having more people capable of having compelling and compassionate conversations. So please check out our Patreon, and please as well have the conversations yourself. We love doing this, Peter, you and I. I'm sure we'd be sorely tempted to do this even if we didn't have listeners. But especially with our listeners, our goal is to get you out there, to help you have the confidence to use the tools that we talk about on the street, on doorsteps, or wherever you might be doing your pro-life outreach. Please go out, have the conversations, because not only are you probably in a different location than Peter or I are, but also you're probably going to have a voice that will resonate even more profoundly with your friends and family members, rather than having a random stranger like Peter or I be the ones who talks to your friends and family on a street corner or on a doorstep. And so please do have the conversations, and check on our Patreon as well.
Beauty. Thank you, sir. If you are watching this on YouTube and you want to listen on your commute, you can also subscribe on your favorite podcast catcher, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your favorite content, or vice versa. If you're listening on your commute and you'd like to watch on YouTube, go check out our YouTube channel. You can find us. We are the Pro-Life Guys podcast. Don't forget to subscribe. We have more than just full episodes on YouTube, so go check it out. Go subscribe so you can be informed every single time we drop a new video. Thank you so much for taking the time and joining us today on the Pro-Life Guys podcast. This was a fantastic conversation, as I mentioned, with Robert from 40 Days for Life. And we hope this inspires you. His testimony Cam's message here at the end, to get involved, to have those conversations, to share the truth about abortion with the people around you. You have a sphere of influence that we don't have access to. And the more people that speak out about abortion, the more people change their minds on the topic, the more lives will be saved, and the faster we will be able to bring an end to this awful and horrific injustice. So go get involved, have those conversations, listen to the episodes that we have done where we highlight on some of the arguments that we've heard and share how we would respond to them, and let us know how that works. Thank you again for tuning in. God bless you all, and we hope you tune in again next week.